My PhD look at wastewater use for urban agriculture, then the risks associated with it. I divided my PhD into four components. The first one was to look at exposure assessment of farmers who use wastewater for agricultural purposes. Then the second component was to look at produce quality analysis, where I actually try to assess the produce quality from where it is produced, that's at the farm, through the market, then also to the various kitchen. And for kitchens, I mean street vending sites, hotels, and also restaurants. Then the third component was to look at risk perceptions of wastewater use. And what I wanted to find out is that if people are aware of the risks associated with wastewater, or even if they are aware of the sources of water used to irrigate it, will it influence the adoption of health protective measures, or will it actually influence their buying and consumption of produce? Then the last component was to put the initial three components together and to quantify the risks and to see whether really farmers who are exposed to wastewater and also consumers who consume produce irrigated by wastewater are actually at risk. And in this case, I was looking at microbial risks and not like risks to chemicals or any other thing. Okay, so for the exposure assessment, what I found was that both irrigation water and soil were the key pathways for risks to farmers. But despite the high contamination of wastewater, exposure to soil was found to be the critical transmission pathway transmission pathway risks for farmers. And this one was mainly because of the frequent hand to soil contact and also hand to mouth contact by farmers. The study found that in a day, farmers could actually have an average of about 10 hand to mouth events. Then for my second component, where I was looking at produce quality, technically they call it farm to fork analysis. What I also found was that there was high contamination at each of the entry points of the food chain, that's farm, market, street vending sites, and hotels. But the contamination levels from the prepared salad at the street vending sites was actually found to be the highest, actually more contaminated than at the farm where the produce was directly wastewater irrigated. Then some of the risk factors that were actually found for produce contamination was the soil and irrigation water, which wasn't surprising, that's at the farm level. But at the market, I also found that washing practices by the vendors was a key contaminant. We found that market vendors could actually wash this produce without changing the water for almost like 30 minutes, and in most cases the water will be contaminated. Then at street vending sites, there wasn't really clear risk factors or risk indicators, but what we found was that these vendors normally prepare the salad in bulk. They bring them at the site and they leave them uncovered. So coupled with the poor environmental conditions, that normally could lead to like high contaminants of pathogens or indicator organisms. Then for the last one, where I quantified the risks, like in basic terms, the risks that were quantified exceeded acceptable and health standards. The study was done in Ghana, but it was done in Ghana only as a case study. So the findings are applicable to a lot of low and middle income countries. I will talk about the international implications first. So currently, the WHO guideline, the current guideline that they are using was developed in 2006. And it relies on what we call a multiple barrier approach, and it also uses a particular model we call quantitative microbial risk analysis. These approaches are somehow limited. The quantitative microbial approach model is limited because it normally uses secondary data, and normally data from different data sets. So what I mean by different data sets is that it can use a data from a developing country and combine it with data from like low or middle income countries and try to use it to estimate the risk. One key significance from my findings is that I did an exposure and assessment, and this exposure assessment, the main aim of doing that one, apart from just trying to find the key transmission pathways, it also helped me to collect primary data on the frequency of exposure and also the concentrations of microbes that are in the medium of exposure. So that one is one aspect that if we feed into the model, we'll be able to sort of produce a more reliable and robust estimate. Then the second one, implication for also the WHO guideline, is that normally earlier researchers, they try to find out the relative significance of disease transmission from wastewater along the domains. What I mean is that, especially in countries where governments are to make trade-offs, you have to prioritize which of the domains do I really sort of intervene, because I can't intervene everywhere. From my findings, I would say that in as much as possible, we should try to intervene everywhere, but if you have to prioritize, then we have to prioritize at the market, but in particular at the kitchens, because that's where it is the point of consumption. Then at the same time, you have a lot of the at-risk groups being exposed to these contaminants. It's also for ease of implementation and also cost of implementation. These are domains that I think it's better to be prioritized. Then for Ghana, I did my study in conjunction with two key regulatory bodies, the Accra Metropolitan Assembly, then also the Food and Drugs Authority. I'm trying to prepare a policy brief that I will share with these two regulatory bodies. I had 4 components of my PhD, and already 2 of them have been published. I am very, very proud of these papers because the first one tried to find where we have to intervene. Then the other aspect also, the findings from the other aspect also told us that just depending or relying on only health indicators to promote the uptake of risk reduction measures is not really sufficient or adequate to do that. Yeah, but then in other words, when we are trying to promote that, we should look at interventions that would directly benefit these farmers, vendors, and also consumers. So I think these are findings that I'm really proud of. I must say all the benefits that I've derived throughout the whole PhD program is attributed to the scholarship that I had from SHARE. So skills like statistical analysis, teamwork, networking, even presentations locally and also abroad. I had opportunity to present at UNC, which is one of the biggest WASH platforms like globally. All of them are attributable to the support that I got from SHARE. Then I must also say that it's also through that support that I was able to meet a lot of renowned researchers in the wash sector. Previously, I've only read about their publications or heard about their names, but through this scholarship, I was able to meet some of them. For example, Professor Sandy Cancross and Val Curtis. These are prominent researchers in the wash sector, and I'm very grateful to SHARE for the support that have also given me the opportunity to meet these people in person.
Thank you.
After my PhD, the school through SHARE and also the Environmental Health Group, which is also a research group in the school, contracted me on 2 projects. The first one had been completed, and that one I was to support with the process evaluation of the National Sanitation Campaign for the government of Tanzania. The report has been published, so people can find it online. And currently, I'm working on a second project, which also seeks to assess the performance of pit latrines, or to put it in simple terms, I'm trying to find ways of extending the lifespan of pit latrines so that in urban settings where space is unavailable or space is difficult, it will take people a long time before their pits can also be filled, or even during emergency situations. If you find a way of extending the pit latrines, then it will also help in emergency situations.